Welcome back, everyone. Let's continue today with creating some more routes, and then we'll also create some middlewares and to protect our routes. So we want to create a group for the user, and what we want to happen here is that we want to get the information about the current user. So we're going to say user/me. The function is going to be called me. And we're going to use a new controller called user controller. So let's actually create this controller, say user controller. Make controller user controller. Okay, that's fine. Let's import the class over here. Now we can actually go to our user controller. Let's create our method. Public function me. Cool. So in order to test it out, let's just return something. Let's say hi. Now we have this in place. Let's go to our Postman, and in here what I actually like doing is to create all my folders so we keep it more organized. I usually create a folder for logged out user, and in here we know that we have the auth group, which is another folder, which is going to be auth. We're going to take these two and put them in here. Then we're going to create a new folder called logged in. So for these routes, we actually expect the user to already be logged in. So we're going to create a new folder in here, which is going to be user. And we're going to create a request called me. And let's just copy this from here. Let's put it in here. So we're going to call it in this route, user me. Let's actually start our server. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so we can see we're getting a response here. So that actually works now. Okay, now that we have our route, let's actually create a middleware. A middleware will let us protect this route, so to make sure that only logged in users can actually access this route. So in order to create a middleware, we're going to say make middleware. We're going to call this one ensure logged in. Now we can go to our middleware in here and we should be able to see it. In this case, I will just copy a snippet that I usually use in these cases. So let's replace this whole handle function with this. Let's just go really fast for it. Let's import the classes and import this class. So we need to import the class from app models user. Cool. So what's going to happen? This is a middleware that's going to take place whenever a request is sent to the server. So it's going to look if there is a bearer token. If that exists, we're going to try and use that bearer token to get the details for the user from that bearer token. We're gonna get the details from here. If the details exist and the user has an email, which should be true for all the existing users, then we are going to attach the user to the actual request. That means that whenever we are in a controller, we are able to do something like this, request user, and we are going to actually get the correct user. Now, if that doesn't exist, then we're just going to send back an error message in a JSON format, which is going to say could not authenticate user. Let's save this, let's clear this, and let's go back to our API. Back in the API, we actually want to add the middleware here, so we're going to say middleware. And we're going to call this middleware called, we need an array in here, so we're going to call it logged in. So this name over here is just an alias for our actual middleware. And if we want this to be available, we need to go to our kernel file inside middleware folder. We're going to go right to the bottom, and here we have all our middleware aliases, and this one is going to be called logged in. And for this, we're going to call our class called ensure logged in, say class. And let's see if this is actually imported. Yes, it's imported here, so now it should actually work. Let's test this out now so we can start our server. And let's go to our Postman. Let's see if this actually works. So if we call this this path, we can see that we're getting could not authenticate user. This is coming from the actual middleware. What we want to do is, I usually like to add the authorization in here on this folder, which means that everything inside this folder will inherit from this parent. So we're going to say in here we want a bearer token. We're going to take the token from the database because we already have it there from the last time we authenticated. Let's go to our postman. We are gonna add the token in here. Let's save this. Now this folder should inherit from the parent, and this one should also do the same. So we're gonna go in here, authorization, we're gonna inherit from parent. So let's see if this works. Yep, you can now see that we passed the authorization middleware and everything seems to work now. Let's close this for now. Okay, let's go to our user controller and actually return the user. So we're gonna say return, and we're gonna take the request user as we discussed earlier, and for that we also need to add a request in here. Let's see if we can import the class. We need the HTTP request. Yeah, we already have it, so let's see if we can get something from here. Or need to serve again. Let's try again. Cool. So you can see that we have all the information, but what we want to have in here is that we want to have our own model for the user. And in order to do that, we are going to create a resource. So to do that, we're going to make resource. We're going to call it user resource. Okay, now if we go to resources in here, this is basically just a way of transforming the data that we want to get back. This is really simple to use. We just need to return an array. So we're going to say return what we want from the database is ID. We're going to say this ID, and let's add some more. We're going to say we want the name. Then we also want the email. And then we also want the avatar. So these are the keys that are going to be returned, and these are the specified columns in the database. And this in here refers to our user. Let's close this in here. Let's close this. And if we go back to our middleware, we don't want to return just the user from here. We want to return it into a transformed format. So we want to say user resource, and let's find our user first. So we're gonna say first in here, let's say user equals to user. So we found the user in here. Now we actually need to say new user resource, and we're gonna give it the user we want to transform. Okay, this seems to work fine. Let's clear this, start our server again. Let's go to Postman, see what we can get back in here. Cool, so we can see now we're only getting the fields that we actually have in our user resource file. Let's go back to our code, let's stop this for the moment. Okay, now that we have pretty much everything working, let's switch to our front end. Here we are. The first thing I want to do is I want to start using environment variables. And for this, we'll want to use the API URL, which is going to be http localhost 8000/API. In order to be able to use this in our project, we have to add it into our Nuxt config. So to make them available, we need to say runtime config and give our variables in here, which ours is going to be API URL. And to get the value from the environment file, we need to say process.env.API URL. Next, I'm going to create a couple of files in a new folder called helpers. And this is going to help us create our requests, so we don't have to use the same variables and values every time. So we're going to call this one as remote service.ts. And I'm going to just copy the same one I'm using for all my other projects, and I'm going to explain what it does. So this helper file is going to help us create GET requests and POST requests. And what we're going to do is that we're going to call, for example, a GET request. We're going to give it the URL and any parameters we need. And what it's going to do is going to generate the URL for us using the API URL we just added in here. So basically this is going to be replaced in here, plus the URL that we're going to give it in the request over here. Then it's also going to automatically add any request headers that we want to use. And the request headers is going to look for the FMG token. And if it's there, it's going to add it as an authorization bearer token. You can see it's added in here. And also it's going to append another header, which is going to make our request accept only application JSON format. So we always want to get a response in a JSON format back. So you can see these request headers are added in here. And that means that now we can actually extend on this remote service helper from on. So let's create another one. This one we're going to use for everything that has to do with the user path. So the user group in the API. We're going to call this user service.ts, which is going to be a TypeScript file. And in here we want to create a method, and we're going to export it. It's going to be called me. We're going to be giving it a type of promise of type any. Okay, and let's see, we're gonna return a GET request. A GET request, which should actually be, it doesn't want to auto import, so let's import it from here. Let's import GET request from remote service. So remote service is this file over here. So we're going to use GET request, and we're going to give it a URL of user/me. Let's add a new line in here. I think I've also made a mistake in here. Yeah, so we don't want HTTPS, we want HTTP. Let's close this for now. One other issue we're going to have is that in here we're using use cookie, which this is not actually going to work. You can say use cookie only in setup scripts like here. So what we're going to do to make this work is that we're going to actually use a store for Nuxt. And the store we're going to use is Pinia. We were going to install this anyway later, so let's actually do it right now. In order to install it for Nuxt, we're going to say npm install, and we're going to install this. Usually I do have some issues with installing this for Nuxt, so one workaround for me at least, it works when I say also install Pinia. So now you should be able to see we have Pinia and then we have Pinia Nuxt. Okay, so in able to make this work, we actually need to go to Nuxt config. We're going to add this in the modules in here. Pinia Nuxt like this, and let's see if it actually works, and it doesn't complain about anything. Okay, seems to be working right now, because usually if something is not right, it's going to complain around here. Let's clear this. Cool, so now we want to actually start using the store. So in order to do that, we are going to create a folder called stores. We're going to create one store for our user, which is going to be user TS. Once again, I'm going to use some boilerplate code in here that I already have for the user. So you can see in here we're defining the store. We have a type for the user, which we're going to create soon. Then we are using the store. We are defining some variables in here. So we have the user, which is going to hold all the user data, the one that comes from the me request. Then we have the authorization token, which we're going to store in here, and then we have the logged in status. Then we have some methods for forgetting the user. This is for logging out, and one for saving the user, which is going to be when we're going to log in. And of course, we're exporting these. So let's fix this first. We are going to create another folder called types, because we're using TypeScript. And we're going to call this user.ts again. And in here, let's create an interface again with the data that we're going to receive from the request. So when we call the request, we're going to get a response with an ID, name, an email, and an avatar. Cool. So let's save this now. Let's see if we can fix all the issues in here. Cool. Okay, now that we have the store, let's go back to our remote services in here and let's refactor this bit of code. I want to start from the beginning of the method here. We're going to say const, we're going to say Pinia in here so we can get a reference to it, and then we're going to say use Nuxt app. Actually, it should say Pinia. Okay, now let's go in here, say const user store. This is just so we use the store we just created. It's called user store, and we have to pass the store in here. Okay, now we want to get the token from there, so we're gonna say token equals user store of token. Cool. Let's see, can we import this? Yep, seems like it worked. Cool. So now instead of this cookie token, we are going to use our token from the store. Cool. This one looks good now. Yeah, let's see if we can. Cool. Looks good. Okay, now let's go back to our default layout and let's refactor this code here. Let's close all the other files. Okay, so we want to start here by importing our stores. So we're going to do basically the same thing as we did before, but in here we're not going to pass the store anymore because in the setup script we don't need to pass the store in here. Okay, let's copy the code from here into our mounted function. I want to save the code from our callback into a separate variable. So we're going to say route query code, and we're going to say it as string. Now, if we do have a code in the URL, we want to save it in the cookie. And now we also want to store it in our store. So we're going to say auth token equals cookie FMG token. Now the idea is that we want to actually get all our user information from the database in case we do have a token. So what we're going to say is if user store has an auth token, let's do a try catching here because we're going to make a request, and we're also going to have a final in here. So in the try, we're going to say user data. We're going to give it a type of any, and we're going to say await me. This me comes from this helper's user service in here. Okay, so seems like we need to have a async in here. Okay, cool. So we're going to say user data, and then let's also console log our user data just so we know what's going on. And what we want to do is that we want to store our user. We're going to say save user in here. We're going to say user data. Okay, in case something goes wrong, let's for now console log this. And finally, what we want to do is we want to change the flag for loading, so we want to say false in here. Okay, so this is only in case we have an auth token, and if we don't have an auth token, everything we want to do is just actually say that the page has finished loading. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, everything seems fine. Actually, I think I want to add another thing in here for the catch. So when there's going to be an error, what we want to do is have user store. We're going to say forget user. And let's add some more stuff to the forget user. Let's go to our stores over here. In forget user, we want to say auth token. I'm gonna say value equals to null, because we want to also get rid of this auth token in here. Okay, before we actually test this out, I know I have an issue in here. So in here I said runtime config API URL, but it actually needs to be inside a public object so that we have access to it in our requests. So let's save this, let's run our environment, and we have the server running already. Let's see if this works. Let's open on the inspector in here. Okay, let's go to our page and continue with Google. You can see we got back with the code and it actually did a request. And our response looks like this: avatar, email, ID, name. And we also have the data in here. Cool, that looks good. Okay, we know that we only have this code here after we log in. So let's go back in here. We want to redirect our user to the user page, because this is the first time they logged in, or at least after a session has expired. So let's check in here if we do have a query code. We want to await navigate to, and we want to throw the user to the user page. Okay, let's go back in here. Let's close this. Let's reload. Actually, let's open it and let's get rid of our token here. Let's go with the first page. Cool. So now if we go continue Google, we expect it to throw us to the users page. Yep. So it gets rid of that auth code and we are getting thrown to the user page. Let's fix these really fast. Okay, one thing I want to do is quickly change the way our page looks. So let's make this a little bit smaller. Okay, this is the user dashboard. Let's take a look. What do we have here? So BG, we're gonna say Indigo 300. Okay, we want this to be the full size of the screen. We want it to be flex, item center, justify center. Okay, good. Let's get rid of this. Let's make a small div, which we can make, maybe give it like a small border, some shadow, Excel, and rounded LG. Say user info. Okay, I want to give it probably a minimum width of, let's say, an arbitrary number, 300 pixels. Okay, I want this to be a flex column, and inside all of these are going to be divs again. So this is going to be our big title. This is going to be a name. Let's say email. Let's make this bold, text center, and maybe give it some padding. Let's make it also uppercase. Okay, this one looks good. Let's just make it really simple for now. We're gonna use an email here and a name. So we want to get the data from our store. So for that, we're going to create a script. This is going to be a setup script. We're going to be using TypeScript. Okay, next let's add our user store in here. I'm just gonna copy paste some code. So the only difference here is that we want to also import this method called store to refs, which is going to store our user, for example, into a ref in here, so we can use it up here. So let's just see if this actually works. Let's say user, and we can see that we actually didn't save it the way we wanted to save it. So it's saved actually with the data in here, so we need to go back to our default, and probably we need to say user data dot data in here. Let's see if that works. Okay, so now you can see we just have the ID, the name, and the email. Cool. So if we go back in here, we're gonna say .name. We probably need to say that it's not empty. Then for the email, we need to say user email. Cool. So now we have a small page showing the information about our user. Okay, the last thing I want to do is just implementing a logout function. So we're gonna say logout in here. Let's say I want it to be a cursor pointer. We're gonna give it a actually maybe 500. Okay, so if we go in here, let's give it some margin of 4, maybe some padding and some text center. Okay, this looks good. Let's have a function for this. We're gonna say handle logout. Okay. Next, let's go to our user service. We're gonna say we want to export another function called logout. It's gonna be a promise. Yeah, let's say it's a get request, and we're gonna say user. Actually, we want this to be off logout. Let's fix this. Let's import that service. And let's copy the request from here. We're gonna take just this bit. We're gonna do a try catch in here. Let's just get rid of these issues. Handle logout. We're gonna say logout in here. We're probably just going to get some data back. So let's call this logout data. Same in here, logout data. We don't need this. Actually, we might actually need this at some point, but let's comment it out for now. User in here. Okay, so we also want to have a loading variable in here. So let's say const loading equals ref. We're gonna say false in the beginning. So now if we're gonna say if loading value, so if this is false, then we can call it again. Okay, and in here we're gonna say loading value equals true. So why we're doing this, that we don't want them to be able to click on logout multiple times, and we want to have like a little small loading icon in here whenever it's doing something. So let's see, we need to do an async in here. Handle logout is going to happen when we click on the logout button. So in order to do this, we say it, click handle logout. Okay, this looks good. Okay, now let's handle our API side, and I actually changed my mind a little bit about this. I want this to be on the user group. Let's go to our API and let's see what we can do here. So we want also to use the middleware logged in, and because we want only users that are logged in to be able to log out, let's change this to a logout function. Let's go into the user controller, create that function here, function logout. We're gonna use a request and a request in here, and in here we want to have a try catch. So let's get our user first. We can get it using the user model. We're gonna find the user by ID. We can get that from our request. Now let's say in this case we want to nullify the Google token. So we're gonna say Google token equals null, and then let's save the user. And then let me just copy this JSON response we have. So we're gonna send back a 200 OK response with the message logout successfully. Let's import this class. We're gonna use app models user, and in here let's just return a message with a 400 error. and our error message is going to be something went wrong, try again later. Okay, let's just check again. We have the API routing here. Let's switch to our client again. Okay, let's just restart this, say npm run dev. Okay, so now if we go in here, let's see, we want to continue with Google. Now we are in here, let's go to our database. Let's check, we have a Google token now. If we go back in here, if we're gonna click on logout, we should expect that token to be deleted. So let's go in here, okay, logout. We got the message back, logged out successfully. Let's go to our database. Okay, and we have deleted our Google token. Now let's handle the logout function on our client side. So here we're going to say we want to get the cookie fmg token. We're gonna say use cookie fmg token. And then we want to set that cookie to null, fmg token value equals to null. And in my experience, we need to have a little bit of wait here in order to let the browser actually delete that cookie. So we're gonna say set timeout. Let's just do an autocomplete in here. Let's give it maybe 500 milliseconds, and we're gonna say user store forget user. This is going to delete everything about the user and the auth token, and then we're going to await. Actually, let's just copy this from here. Uncomment it. We need to add an async over here. Okay, so it's going to delete the token, to delete the cookie. It's going to delete everything about the user and then navigate to the user. One other thing is that when we are in the user over here, so continue, when we are right here, basically we are telling the page that we do have a user available. So when there's not going to be a user available, we're going to see a lot of errors in here in the console. So to avoid that, let's say this, so in case it's null, it's just not going to show anything. So let's reload this, say logout. Log out successfully. It should have navigated to, oh yeah, it's navigating to the user. We actually want this to navigate to, so if we look right now over here, we don't actually have the token anymore. So let's log in again. Continue with Google. We have the token, we have the user. If we're going to log out, the token disappears, we're getting sent back to the main page, and if we look at the user again, there's nothing in here. So we don't have the token, we don't have anything about the user. Okay, let's just clean up a little bit and let's stop here for now. Next time we'll continue with some middlewares, and we're also going to make this look a little bit prettier. See you next time.